Okay, let me explain what we're going to do in this video lesson. Ultimately, we want to end up with what we have here, where we have our lights folder. We have paint and texture. Now, if you notice on the paint and texture, right, I have all this painting of tree removals and statues and things like that. But there was one other thing I kind of noticed or started thinking about as I wanted to move into Maya, and that is we're going to run into some issues. We could totally do it, but I think it's just going to be simpler by painting out these structures, these little water structures in our paint and textures folder. So we want to do that up here. So you want to clone, so where you like clone stamped and painted out trees. And also in this lesson, we'll add some very subtle kind of like lights, ground lights and things like that. But we want to remove in this folder up here at this top level some of those water structures. So if you see that go on and off, you'll see kind of what that's doing. And then down here we have our base with statues. And then the other thing that we're going to want to do for this base without statues is as the camera moves forward, these elements in the foreground are going to move and we're going to be able to see behind them. So we need to create some textures to back those so that we don't kind of get like a doubling or a mirror kind of effect. And so if I turn that off, you can see this layer right here that we have kind of painted a backing. Okay, so that's essentially kind of what we're wanting to create. So we want a lights layer, this paint and textures with all these are paint layers. We remove statues and trees, but we also want to remove these water elements in this folder. And then base with statues is kind of everything. And then if we turn that off, this base with without statues, we're going to call that backing. So like when we can see around things, we want to have a texture that could kind of start to fill in. And so that's what we're going to be creating in this video. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up our paint textures folder, and I'm going to I actually didn't make any well lights, but well lights can be important too. Like a lot of times with night scenes. Let's see, like right here, a lot of times with night scenes, things are just kind of brighter on the ground, right? Because there's like cars, there's like light posts and things like that, and things just kind of start shining upwards, kind of on buildings and things like that. So you kind of want um, a sense of like these little kind of what you would kind of refer to as like well lights and things like that. And so like if you use like a screen or something like that, you can kind of get some of these lights to kind of just kind of feel like there's a little bit of light coming up from the ground, um, shining on kind of different areas. I'm just kind of doing this super fast. It's kind of like a little tangent that I didn't mean to get onto, but yeah, this is going to be something that's kind of important too. Okay. Yeah, and I know that it doesn't look too convincing right now, but we're going to kind of blur some of this out and stuff too here in just a second. So you could have like some little well lights like that and so forth. So things like this that just make this feel a little more convincing. Go to our eraser tool, kind of some stuff like this too to make it kind of feel like there's light coming up from the bottom a little bit. We don't really want it on the bridge so much, so we'll do some like this and kind of break some of this up. And we could put more lights like that if we wanted to take more time. So that's definitely something that you could consider. But let's go ahead and blur this. Okay. Bring some of that down a little bit. Just kind of play around with some of this. And I'm just doing this like super quick just to get the sense of something in here. Do that again. And you can definitely spend more time on that to make it a little more convincing. But that's essentially kind of like what well lights are. Maybe we'll blur. And yeah, so just a little hint of, you know, like street lights and things like that. Okay, so I'm not going to mess around, like just making something super subtle like that. But you can spend more time on that. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to get rid of some of these. So I'm going to make another layer. And actually, let's delete that layer. So I'm going to come back up to our paint and texture, make a new folder, and we'll call this paint for underscore capital LYR. Let's save this overall image out. So I'm going to do File and Save As. And we want to save these as a TIFF. So I'm going to change this to TIFF. And then we always want to turn layers off. Okay. So I'm going to go to, I made a little DMP export folder. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to call this DMP. Okay. So TIFF, layers off, and save. I'm not going to do any image compression. And I'm going to click OK. Okay, so there is that. The next thing I want to do is I want to save a version with the statues, but where the sky is not on, right? So that we have an alpha for this. And so the way we're going to do that is I'm going to come to the layer with base with statues. I'm going to come down here and let's control click on this layer right here. And I think that looks okay. I'm just kind of looking to make sure, yep, everything's selected. And so we need to turn that into an alpha channel. So I'm going to come over here to the channels, and with that selection, I'm going to click this little button, and it's made an alpha of that. So File, Save As. Again, we want this to be a TIFF. We want layers off. I'm going to go into that folder, and I'm going to call this DMP, and then this one is the one with statues. Okay, and we'll click Save, and OK. Now I don't want this alpha anymore, and it's fine that we've got the sky in there. That's completely fine because that alpha is going to remove that sky for us, so that's completely fine. So I'm going to drag this alpha layer to the trash can. You can also right click on it, and when you right click on it, if it was still there, actually let me do Control Z. I can right click on it, and I can also go to delete that channel. So you can drag and drop it in the trash can, or you can right click and delete. Okay, I'm going to come back to layers, and I'm going to turn the eyeball off for base with statues, and I'm going to do Control D as in dog to deselect that, and then I'm going to open up this base without statues. So I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to Control click that layer, and I'm just looking to make sure this all looks good. Just FYI, like if you saw like a section that you're like, oh, that needs to be like if there was a divot in the building or something, you can always alt click on that, and you could just come and paint white or black or whatever you need. But this looks good to me, so I'm going to go to File. Oops, we need to turn that into an alpha channel. Sorry about that. So we Control click that layer, come to Channels, and we're going to click this little icon, and it's going to make an alpha channel. Don't worry about that mask. We want the alpha channel. Okay. And now I'm going to do File, Save As, TIFF, turn layers off, DMP export, and we'll do DMP without statues. No layers, TIFF. Yep, that looks good. And save. And OK. I'm going to drag that alpha channel to the trash, Control D as in dog, and back to layers. I'm going to collapse that folder. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn everything off other than this sky layer. And actually, if you don't have this sky layer, let me just delete that. I know I've got it like in one of these folders. So I'm just going to open up one of these folders, and I'm going to alt drag that sky layer, and I'm just going to drag it until I see like that little line pop up right there. And so it's going to, it made a copy of it. However, it's still inside that folder. So I'm going to pull that down again until I see a skinny little blue line. I'm not alt dragging, I'm just dragging. And I'm going to let go. And now I can see it kind of popped over to the left a hair. So now I know if I collapse that folder and then turn the eyeball off, we'll just see just this guy, which is great. no alpha. We don't want any alpha for this guy. And we'll go to File, Save As, turn layers off, TIFF, DMP export, and we'll call this sky and save. And at this point, I think I'm going to go ahead and turn all this back on. I think we are now ready to get into Maya and do some work.